From CPRE and the CPRE Knowledge Hub, this is Research Minutes, a weekly look at new and important research in education. Today we look at community schools, which provide a variety of student services and holistic supports to serve the comprehensive needs of children, families, and their communities.
This model of schooling has been around for decades, but it's experiencing a dramatic expansion lately, and there are more than 5,000 such schools in place nationwide.
In a new study by the RAND Corporation, researchers examined the impact of the New York City Community Schools Initiative, the largest program of its kind in the nation. Co-authored by RAND's William Johnston, the study found notable positive impacts on absenteeism, student discipline, and educational attainment.
Also separately, for elementary and middle schools, we found a positive impact on math achievement scores, as well as improvements in students' sense of connectedness to adults, and then also teachers' sense of responsibility for student success.
Johnston joined CPRE Knowledge Hub managing editor Keith Heumiller to discuss those findings and some important implications for community school policy, practice, and future research.
Even though New York is a unique context for any study of school reforms, the program's alignment with prior research on the community school strategy does make this study relevant and generalizable to other community school programs in the country.
That's right now on Research Minutes.
Hello and welcome to Research Minutes. I'm Keith Heumiller, managing editor of the CPRE Knowledge Hub. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with William Johnston, associate policy researcher with the RAND Corporation and a faculty member with the Party RAND Graduate School. Thanks so much for joining us, William.
Thank you.
Today, we're discussing your new study, which was co-authored with John Enberg, Isaac Opper, Lisa Sontag-Padilla, and Leah Zanakis, titled Illustrating the Promise of Community Schools, an assessment of the impact of the New York City Community Schools Initiative. It was recently published at rand.org, and it examines the New York City Community Schools Initiative and its impacts on outcomes including academic performance, attendance, discipline, and even opportunities for family empowerment. But to start, for those who aren't familiar, could you give us just a little bit of background on the initiative itself? How and when did this come to be, and what did it involve?
Yeah, so the New York City Community Schools Initiative is the largest program of its kind in the nation. Community schools is an umbrella term describing schools that provide various services to address the comprehensive needs of students, families, and communities. And that's often done through partnerships with community-based organizations or local universities or even other city agencies besides education departments. This model of schooling has been around for decades, but it is experiencing a dramatic expansion with more than 5,000 such schools in place nationwide. In New York City, there have been schools like this for a long time as well, although the specific program we've been studying was created in 2014 and currently consists of over 270 schools in the city.
And what was it that led your team to conduct this particular study? Did you go in with specific questions about the initiative or maybe holistic education reform efforts in general?
Yeah, the study emerged out of a partnership with the New York City Mayor's Office of Economic Opportunity, and that office serves as a broker for various evaluations of social and anti-poverty programs in the city. And our goals in the study were to provide an independent evaluation of the program, and both to look not just at the impacts of the program on a variety of measures of student success, but also we studied the implementation of the program and the process of how it was rolled out. We actually had a prior report that came out in 2017 that focused on just the implementation progress after the first 2 years of the program's existence.
And so for this particular study, your team was actually analyzing impacts across 7 different specific domains, ranging from academics to student connectedness to family support. I'd imagine that involved quite a bit of work. Could you maybe give us an overview of your approach and the scope of this work?
Sure. So the schools that are in the program were not randomly selected to be community schools. So it was important to try to develop as good of a comparison group as possible where we could have an apples to apples comparison. The goal of a study like this is to determine whether students in the community schools were performing better than they would be doing if their schools had not been designated as a community school. We needed to do what's often called a quasi-experimental approach that is not a random assignment experiment, which is often very difficult to do in the realities of a city and education programming. So we used a combination of techniques, one called a matching technique where Each community school in the program is matched with either a single other school or sometimes a couple other sort of statistical twins that are very similar on a range of measures measured before the program started. And then the schools are compared to their matched comparisons. We also used another method called a difference in difference approach that accounts for any remaining pre-program differences that still exist even after that matching process is done. So the goal again is to develop as much of a apples to apples comparison between the treatment schools, which are the schools in the community school program, and other similar schools in New York City that are similar in as many ways as possible, except for the fact that they're not in the community school program.
So your team came away with a number of different findings, including that the initiative had positive effects on attendance and grade progression. Could you walk us through what you learned?
Sure. We found that the program is helping students in a variety of ways, particularly in elementary and middle schools. We found consistent positive impact on student attendance, which we focus on students being chronically absent, and so that's missing 10% or more of the days of school in a year. And so we saw consistent reduction in chronic absenteeism among students. We also saw educational attainment was improved in these schools. And educational attainment we measure through students progressing to the next grade level when they were supposed to, rather than being retained for an extra year. And then in high school, students completing and earning more credits, and then also ultimately graduating from high school. And so we saw improvements in all of those areas. Also separately, for elementary and middle schools, we found a positive impact on math achievement scores in the third and final year of our study, but we did not find an impact on reading scores. Those were not measured in high schools. And then finally, we found that the program had a reduction in disciplinary incidents among those younger grades, as well as improvements in students' sense of connectedness to adults, which we measured through school climate surveys in the city. And then also teachers' sense of responsibility for student success, which is another school climate survey measure that we had. And those were both seen to be improving at the elementary and middle school levels.
So given the potential influence of an initiative like this, especially at a time when holistic reforms, as you mentioned, are increasingly gaining traction here in the U.S., I'm curious what you think the implications of this study might be.
The main takeaway is that the New York City Community Schools Initiative is having a positive impact along many measurable student outcomes. But the fact that we find no effect along some outcome suggests that there may be room for improvement in the strategy as implemented in New York. This is particularly true in high schools, where we found fewer statistically significant effects. Even though New York is a unique context for any study of school reform, just given its size as the largest district in the country, and also the fact that the New York City Community Schools Initiative is a uniquely large initiative being implemented at such a big scale, the program's alignment with prior research on the community school strategy does make this study relevant and generalizable to other community school programs in the country. And so when I say that the New York model is aligned with other strategies, there are sort of four key pillars that have been identified throughout years of research on community schools that are seen as like the key pillars of the community school program. And those are health and wellness supports, collaborative leadership practices and distributed leadership among administration, expanded learning opportunities through extended day activities, and robust family engagement and empowerment strategies. And those four things are very much the core structures of the New York City model that are often present in many other examples across the country. And so seeing positive findings in New York does suggest that there may be important positive benefits in other programs as well, but certainly that is beyond the scope of our study.
So my last question then is, do you think there are opportunities here for future research, either for your team or others working in this area?
Absolutely. There are many directions for future research based on the work we have done so far in New York. First, we see the need for an explicit study of what's happening at the district level with the city agencies that are partnering to work on the program as a whole and how they are supporting the implementation at schools. Again, this is a very large-scale program that involves a lot of district-level staff, and that's not an area that we really focused on in our study. We were looking specifically at what was happening in the schools. Second, although we see great merit in this comprehensive evaluation that considers the cumulative impact of programs across the community school program, we encourage other researchers, or perhaps in future work by RAND, to look at focused investigations into specific components of the program, such as the family engagement and empowerment activities, or the extended day activities, or the mental health service provision. Again, the real hallmark of a community school program is that all of these programs are happening simultaneously in a coordinated and comprehensive fashion. but there certainly is more to be learned about specific components and what seems to be working in those specific areas. And finally, we encourage scholars to examine more long-term impact of the community school strategy, ideally extending beyond the limited time frame that we used in our evaluation. Our study only looked at outcomes 3 years out from the program's launch, and a lot of evidence suggests that whole school reforms, such as the implementation of a community school strategy, could take several years to really find positive impact and establish the course of success that it's intended to have. And of course, another area of inquiry is to look at other cities and programs that are implementing the community school strategy as well. Some of the larger instances of the community school strategy in the country are found in Chicago, Cincinnati, Oakland, California, and now Los Angeles is expanding its community schools as well. And certainly much can be learned from all of these examples beyond just what we're finding in New York City.
Certainly seems like a line of inquiry worth following going forward. Well, this is just incredible work, William, and I encourage all of our listeners to go and read the full report. Again, it's titled Illustrating the Promise of Community Schools, an Assessment of the Impact of the New York City Community Schools Initiative. It's available at rand.org. William Johnston, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for listening to this week's Research Minutes, presented by the CPRE Knowledge Hub. For more episodes of this podcast, or to subscribe to the series, visit us at researchminutes.org. To share your thoughts on today's episode, or to suggest future topics, follow us on Twitter at CPRE Hub. That's CPRE Hub.